Good evening, folks. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This evening, we will be entertaining two agendas. We're going to have our Committee of the Whole agenda, which outlines a lot of the reports, the information within those reports, and of course, Council will debate and make a decision on that, and then that will be followed by our Council meeting. And our Council meeting is the part of tonight's agenda that will ratify most, if not all, of those decisions. So with that, we are going to start out with a prayer by Councillor Dave Elliott, and that's going to be followed by the National Anthem by Mr. Joe Longfellow. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we've been blessed with the opportunity to stand before residents tonight as municipal leaders, elected to guide the city through decision-making process, to hear comments from every person that resides here. Lord, we just ask that we keep this in mind through the deliberations tonight, that we listen to both sides of all equations, that we allow all voices to be heard. And Lord, we just ask that you wrap your protecting hands around our valuable men and women who have given their lives to serve in the Canadian forces throughout the world. We just ask that you protect them and you allow us to represent what they stand for here in council chambers. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. Well done as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure.
I got you that time, Joel. Well, thank you, members. And first off, we're going to ask the clerk to introduce any addendum items this evening. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is one addendum item this evening, the addition of a second presentation under the presentation section of your agenda. The CAO will be making a brief presentation concerning the 2013 gas tax award.
Thank you, Ashley. With that, members of council, if I can have a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Elliott. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? Disclosures of interest? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a pecuniary interest in item number 6 as I represent the company involved in the item.
So noted. Thank you, Councillor. Any further disclosures? Members? With none, determination of items requiring a separate discussion this evening. Councillor Butters, Councillor Desmarais, and Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1.
Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 4.
Councillor Steele.
Item 6 for the conflict.
Any further items, members? Councillor Danch.
14.
If I can have someone raise item 2 as well, please. Councillor Steele, thank you. Madam Clerk, any other items you want lifted?
No, thank you.
Bob, you good? Pardon me? Member of staff, any items you want lifted? You're good? Everyone's fine? Okay, members of council, if we can approve the items not requiring separate discussion this evening, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Danch. Further questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We do have a few presentations this evening, which will be taking place at the podium. And first off, I want to call on Dr. Debbie, Deborah. I always know you as Debbie. Debbie Wilkes-Whitehall. Deb wants to come up and speak about the Niagara South Medical Society and presentation she's going to have for a few individuals. Deb? Come on up. Welcome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Deb, if you just want to press the button there and you're good. You're live. There you go.
Is that better? Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you so much to the City of Port Colborne for obviously their ongoing support and also in allowing us to present these awards at this meeting. So I'm here on behalf of the Niagara South Medical Society, which is a branch society of the Ontario Medical Association. And we have quite an active branch society in this area. And just in recognition, one of the persons who has helped certainly in getting these awards for the people is Dr. Jeff Remington, and as well we have a past director from District 4, Dr. Mike Goodwin, who is here as well. So thank you. So the first recipient of the award is Joanne Farah-Coley, and she is receiving the Community Service Award. She is the Health Service Coordinator for the City of Port Colborne, and I don't know if anybody really truly knows how much, well maybe you do know, how much dedication and time and effort and she puts in, to her job, and the physicians of Port Colborne truly, truly appreciate everything she does, and the physicians of Niagara as well. And she navigates and advocates for the patients of Port Colborne. And so anyway, we thank her for that, and so we have an award. Joanne, would you like to come up?
What I love the most. Go ahead. You all know how much I love to speak in front of people. Take a deep breath. Good evening, Mayor Badaway, members of council, staff, and friends. Tonight is indeed a very special evening. To be honored by the OMA is amazing, as is being nominated by our Family Physician of the Year, Dr. Jeff Remington. It is amazing because it means that our physicians here in Port Colborne are proud enough of what they do every day to come together and honor one of their own. As we all know, Dr. Dewar is the epitome of family medicine in all that it should and can be, and he's next to be honored. I have to speak to Dr. Dewar because I really have very little to say about myself, because what I do is really based on everything, every day, that Dr. Dewar did for 50 years. Actually, I just found out it was 49. Dr. Dewar has truly made my job of recruitment nearly impossible. How in the world can you find a replacement for a physician that has practiced for 49 years? He must have graduated from medical school at age 16? Kid genius. All kidding aside, all there is left to say is thank you. We are very blessed to have an amazing cohort of physician leaders here in Port Colborne. All of you make my work a piece of cake. Every day I look forward to coming to Port Colborne to do something that many would call a job. I call it my passion. To advocate for every single citizen of Port Colborne is truly a blessing for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. The next award goes to Dr. Dewar, who Joanne has already mentioned, and he is receiving the Glenn Sawyer Service Award. The award was established in honor of Dr. Glenn Sawyer, the longest-serving General Secretary of the OMA, and it is awarded in recognition of service to the OMA, the medical profession, and the public. And I've had the honor and privilege of working with Dr. Dewar for the past several years, although not 49, yes. So he has been here in the city providing just unbelievable service and care, just to a degree of excellence for the people of Port Colborne. And we certainly wish him well in his retirement, but we'll certainly miss his services. So if you could help me thank him, and Bev and Jim, if you'd like to come up. And that is for the support person who was there at every turn. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay.
Go ahead. Would you like to say a few words? Just a few. Just a
Okay.
few.
I'm not heavily into public speaking, but anyway, it is an honor to receive this award from peers who know a thing or two about how you do your medical practice. I would like to thank Joanne, who spoke just a few minutes ago, for her work. She has made my retirement plans a lot easier by helping me repatriate Dr. King, and with him taking over my practice, I don't feel guilty about abandoning people. I also would like to thank Mayor Vance and Council for all the efforts they've made over the last 10 to 20 years at trying to make sure Port Colborne has sufficient family physicians to look after people. So thanks, Vance. Thank you. And that's it. My dear wife has been working at my side for the last 42 years. 41, okay. So thank you, Bev, as well.
Jim, don't go anywhere yet.
Don't go away
Don't go anywhere yet.
Oh, I have more.
It's my turn, Jim. I have to say, guys, it's amazing. You know, Jim's been my family doctor since 1968. So switching over to a doctor, a new doctor now, is going to be quite a change, not only for myself, but I'm sure for all the patients that Jim's been taking care of for many, many years. And as a mayor, when I became mayor in 1997, I recall, Jim, and you probably can recall this, him and I flying up to Ottawa with Donna Burrell at the time for physician recruitment. And it was Jim, actually, that really worked hard with us, the city of Port Colborne, because we found ourselves, as you said earlier, in a position where healthcare was falling more and more on our shoulders here at City Hall because of the changes that were being made at the Niagara Health System. And a lot of that had to do with physician recruitment. And I recall that flight down to Ottawa in the morning, spending the whole day at Ottawa University trying to recruit physicians for Port Colborne, which, by the way, was very successful throughout that entire recruitment process. And then, of course, flying home that night. And kudos to Jim, because he did take time, as busy as he is, in his own life and practice, to take the time to help the city of Port Colborne with not only recruiting new physicians, but also with respect to healthcare in general, whether it be having to do with our hospital or with primary care throughout the community. And as Joanne stated, a lot of the work that she's done is to the credit of Jim and, of course, the entire team, the medical faculty here in Port Colborne, which Jim has led and been a part of for so many, over 49 years. So, Jim, it's my privilege this evening, on behalf of the entire community, to take this opportunity to simply say thank you for the many, many years that you, Bev, and, of course, the entire team over there at the clinic has given to your patients and, of course, to the overall community with respect to primary health care here in the city of Port Colborne, and I am sure of many surrounding areas. I know Jim also took his time to be the team doctor for the junior B hockey team, for other sports organizations, and so Jim was always somewhere, and he was the medical go-to guy. I know when I banged up my knee when I was 17 and I came in the dressing room, Jim was there. And of course, I'm sure a lot of other youngsters and elders that had the opportunity to play and or take part in recreation in the city had the services of Jim by their side, and how much we're grateful for that. So with that said, I do want to take this opportunity, and it's a small token of our appreciation, Jim, but it's just our way to say thank you. As I say it all the time, and I'm going to say it again, guys, I would much rather send you to Hawaii. But they won't let me. So I'll blame them. But no, this is our token of appreciation, Jim. It's presented to you, Dr. James Dewar, on the occasion of your retirement, on behalf of members of City Council and all the citizens of the city of Port Colborne. Thank you for your many years of your dedication and commitment to your patients and your overall community. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
And finally, as they're going back to their seats, I do want to say to Bev, too, it is always I'm not sure if I should say better half, a good half, or better half's fine? Okay. But I also want to give my appreciation to you, Bev. We all recognize that being a family physician in a community like this does call upon Jim a lot, and of course it does affect your life as well, and of course the life of the entire family. So to you and to the rest of the family, thank you. Appreciate it. Now, if I can, I'm going to call Bob Heil down here. He has a presentation to make, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also speak about Joanne. Yes, I'm going to Joanne. I know you're going to get all shy and everything on me, but I'm going to speak anyways. Joanne, she did reach this milestone with respect to the reward that she just won. But as many said earlier, and I'm sure many do recognize, quite frankly, folks, within the last decade, healthcare has really defaulted onto the shoulders of City Hall. And of course, into my office, the mayor's office. I'd say especially since the year 2000, when the transformation went from our own board, our own governance structure here in Port Colborne, to the overall Niagara Health System and a regional structure. And like it or not, it happened. It is what it is, and we dealt with it. And we dealt with it, in my view, in a successful manner by hiring people like Joanne to really lead the team with respect to healthcare. And I can say with a great deal of confidence that the healthcare in the city of Port Colborne now in 2013 is more enhanced because of the community-based primary health care that we have available here for our residents and the surrounding municipalities such as Wainfleet residents. And a lot of that has been championed by Joanne, and Joanne, I want to thank you for that. But as well with Joanne, we have other members of that same team. We have Dr. Dewar here, we have Dr. Remington here, and we have many others that have really made these services available for you, the residents of Port Colborne. And although, you know, a lot of times you read about my words in the paper or maybe a councillor's words in the paper, by all means, we're just part of a small part of it. The bigger part of it is Joanne, her team, the medical faculty here in the city of Port Colborne, and they deserve a lot of credit. Joanne, you were recognized this evening for it. Kudos to you, well deserved. Small token of appreciation only, but a big thank you to you and to Jeff and to your team, Jeff, the medical faculty in general, led by yourself. I want to thank you as well because our patients in Port Colborne are better for it because of your efforts and Joanne, your efforts as well. So thank you, guys. Bob, it's all yours.
Your Worship, I'm not going to speak very long either. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Mayor and members of Council. I attended the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference in Ottawa last week. We were nominated of all the municipalities between 10,000 and 75,000 for our efforts in energy conservation, long-term use, best use of gas tax money. Every municipality in Ontario is given a per capita percentage or per capita payment of gas tax that the federal government collects. It's administered by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. We won. We won in the category 10,000 to 75,000 population. Over all the municipalities, 444 municipalities in Ontario, of which 90% of them are under 75,000. I was ecstatic, Mr. Mayor, that the president of AMO, Mr. Russ Powers, and MP Gary Reckford, Member of Parliament for Kenora, who is also Minister of State for Science and Technology and Federal Economic Development Initiatives for Northern Ontario, presented Port Colborne with this plaque. It's a board. But it says a wealth, a ton of information about the efforts that this council has placed in competition all over Ontario in using gas tax funds for efforts to have cleaner water, purer air, energy efficiency in the Valley Health and Wellness Centre. Mr. Mayor, I am so pleased to be there representing the city, and I really am so pleased to present this to the city for this.
Thanks, Bob. Well, just briefly, thanks, Bob, and I do want to give my appreciation too to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for recognizing this great project here in the city of Port Colborne. But again, it's not one person, it's not 10 people. It's the entire staff here, to operations, to community services, but most importantly, to the group of people that stuck it out for the past 4 years to ensure that that project got completed. We had a committee of community individuals that sometimes it wasn't very easy throughout the community to be one of those individuals. But they stuck it out, and they were very successful at doing so. And of course, you can see the end results on the corner of Elizabeth and Highway 3, and we're hoping that the entire community are able to enjoy that well into the future. This does represent their efforts, and I say they, I mean all of them, staff, the committee, as well as councils, not just this council, but the past councils for their efforts. So to all you guys, congratulations, well done. And let's enjoy that fine facility that we call the Valet Center here in Port Colborne for many more years. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to delegations. And I'm going to mix up the order of delegations here this evening, ladies and gentlemen, because we do have some other folks that want to speak. So I am going to start off with Mr. Marcel Castanquet, the Executive Director for the Hamilton Niagara, Gene Smith, as well as Gene Smith, the Regional Director of Health and Wellness, Niagara South Health Link, Health Promoter, and Health and Wellness Team Leader, as well as others that are going to be speaking on some of these issues. So, folks, come on up. Marcel, welcome. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you, too. Realize that we would actually get the opportunity to be here tonight. We're glad that we're here, and we'd like to talk to you about this after-school program that we are looking at possibly launching in Port Colborne. For members of council that don't know, Santa Sante Community is one of the 7 community health centers that operate in the Lynn area, and it is very similar to Bridges, the one with the community health center that just opened in Port Colborne. The one difference with Santa Sante, however, is that Santa Sante is the only one of the 7 health centers that has a Lynn-wide mandate. In other words, we serve communities from Hamilton to Fort Erie to Port Colborne across the whole Lynn because it is the only health center that has the mandate to provide the primary care services in French. And so what happens is that the Ministry of Health at the time when it created Santa Sante 20 years ago, and the Lynn kept up with the mandate, and so it's the only health center that has a complete mandate. And so that's why basically, you're seeing Santa Sante, who, head office is located in Welland, and we have another site in Hamilton, coming before before Port Colborne Council to talk to you about this after-school program. And the program they want to talk about is that a couple of years ago, the Government of Ontario committed itself to improve child and youth health issues. The Ministry of Health Promotion developed the Child and Youth Health and Wellness after-school strategy, and that strategy was basically aimed at children who are basically, we use the old term, the latchkey kids, where they go home, nobody home to take care of the child after school, or they're on their own. So the strategy focused on supporting comprehensive after-school programming in specific priority neighborhoods. And when the ministry did their studies, they identified about 70 neighborhoods across the province of Ontario, and they prioritized those neighborhoods. And what happens is that they started funding these after-school programs in these various neighborhoods across the province. And so this was part of a demographic research that they had done across the province. And the Francophone population of Port Colborne was identified as one of these neighborhoods, and more specifically, the neighborhood surrounding École Saint-Joseph, designated as a very high-need area. Welland, there's a neighborhood in Welland that was designated that way, and there's also one in Hamilton that hasn't received or been approved for funding yet. So the after-school strategy will support and contribute to the following long-term outcomes: a decrease in childhood obesity, healthy eating by contributing to an increase in fruit and vegetable consumption, increase in physical activity in children and youth, improved learning outcomes and student achievement. So we're trying to build capacity, work with the schools, and help the child achieve better standards in school, reduce the rate of youth violence, and the reduction in childhood poverty by trying to basically break the cycle. The Ministry of does not fund the programs to the full capacity. In other words, what happens is that when the ministry selects neighborhoods or decides to fund the programs in neighborhoods, it doesn't give 100% of the required funding. And so what happens, it's up to the agency that's been asked or been approached to offer the program to develop local partnerships to be able to gather or put together the kinds of monies that are required, to be able to offer the program. So it's mandatory for organizations to seek financial support, in-kind support, or partnerships to subsidize the programs. The delivery organizations must establish and maintain at least 2 local partners that can advance the quality of the program and support the program delivery. And so in many neighborhoods, the program may be offered in the school setting, or may be offered in some kind of community center, or may be offered in a variety of different areas. And so there's all kinds of in-kind services or exchange basically that goes on between the service provider and the other organizations that are partnered. In that, costs that are not eligible under the program are venue expenses, in other words, rent, okay, for the facilities, permit fees, material for, so there's all kinds of stuff that is not included, okay, in the budgets. And those are usually where we will go to try and build the partnerships, okay, in order to be able to get in-kind support or support to be able to offer the program. The sites that are used to offer the programs usually are identified in the priority neighborhood because basically you're trying to service a certain neighborhood, and so you're not trying to go across town. And usually the types of sites that are used, like I was saying a while ago, like are things like recreation centers, because of the spaces, outdoor facilities, and so what happens, to be able to really enhance the whole physical aspect of the program, they need to be open to participants on school days, and they obviously need to be safe, secure, healthy, and accessible. The program is structured in such a way that over the course of a week, and the service provider, like Centre de Santé in this case, really is required to provide, okay, reports to the ministry on a weekly basis. I mean, what happens is that the program is so structured that on a weekly basis, we have to be able to tell the ministry how many children attended, like on a day-to-day basis, and the curriculum has been has been approved and reviewed on a weekly basis by the ministry. And the program basically contains 30% of physical activity, 20% of healthy eating and nutrition education, 20% wellness and personal health, or wellness and personal health, and 30% of the remaining time can be used for community needs such as cultural programs, homework, and everything else, okay? So the on-site programming, or the staff that provide the programs, we have a ratio of 1 adult, okay, to every 10 children or youth. The qualified staff that are used for the programs are usually graduates of post-secondary child-youth related programs such as early childhood education, sports and leisure, social workers, psychology, sociology, kinesiology. And the beauty of having an agency like Centre de Santé offer those kinds of programs is that many of those workers already work inside of our center, so that we also have nurses and physicians and the social workers that can support the staff that actually deliver the program. So, for example, if a staff identifies a child that's participating in the program with mental health issues, very often we can bring in one of our social workers or one of our therapists to be able to work with the child and the family immediately. A staff training program or a staff training plan also has to include a number of things, because all of our staff need to be trained in behavioral management and conflict resolution. They need to be trained and hold a current first aid and CPR certificate. They need to be trained in high-five principles of heavy child development. They need to be trained in healthy eating for the development of healthy behaviors. They need to be trained in adapting physical activity to include children and youth at all levels of athletic activity, ability, I should say, and those with physical, sensory, and intellectual disability. And they need also safe arrival and dismissal policy, concussion prevention policies. So the center has to have all kinds of policies to make sure that the children that do come and participate in the program are very safe and secure. Now, the question that begs, I guess, is why do we want to offer the program at the Y? Well, one of the things that we found with, or one of the successes in Welland when we started the Welland program last year, we were supposed to start the program with 20 children, and within the matter of about 3 months, we were already up to 46 students, okay, or 46 youth. And I think that one of the successes in that is that we actually decided, contrary to other programs, is we took it out of the school context. We took it and we brought it outside of the schools that were within the neighborhood, so that we could give the children that were participating a break from school, basically, so that it wasn't in a school setting. And the program delivery organizations are expected to foster a positive environment, so this is what the Y does. We want a place that's culturally diverse and free from discrimination, sites where participants feel engaged, respected, and involved in their community, a fun social context which is conducive to learning without the classroom setting, and participants should want to come to the program every day because they feel connected to the staff, the program, their group, and the group in an atmosphere that builds self-esteem, reliance, and self-reliance. So those are some of the reasons why we want to use the Vail Center to be able to do it. And so what we are asking council tonight is to waive the fee for the Golden Puck Room for the duration of the program during the school year, basically, which runs from September to June, excluding a number of dates that we had put down in the presentation. We'd like to be able to use the outdoor sports facilities and the rinks, when it is available. And we would like to look at discussing, depending on the outcome of the program after the first 3 to 6 months, there's a potential that the program could go on for at least 3 years. And so we would certainly like to be able to discuss that possibility of keeping the program there for 3 years if that's the case. Current partnerships, there's at least 2 local partners that can, partnerships that can be advanced in this program. Obviously the YMCA, the Subway, who has the contract, I guess, for the food in the Vail Center, possibly the site, the city of Port Colborne. There's also other possibilities like the Catholic School Board that operate École Saint-Joseph, but those, I guess, are all ongoing discussions that we need to be looking at into the future. But that's basically the program in a nutshell. Initially, we're hoping to serve 20 children. The ministry has funded us for 20 children, and the funding for the program basically works to. The funding for the program, for the Port Colborne program, the ministry has approved a total budget of $24,000 only. It works out that they fund $1,200 per child participating in the program for the 10-month period. And right now in Port Colborne, they've accepted 20. And obviously, if the need shows, or if the response, I should say, to the program is such that the ministry has completely, was completely short on the 20, there's always the possibility of looking at it down in the future, because we know that this is in well, and this is what happened. We initially started with 20, but when they saw the numbers jump to 46 within 3 months, this year they've increased it to 30, and so we'll see where it goes from there. But anyways, for a start, we would like to start with the 20 children, and they would be children that would come from the surrounding area of École Saint-Joseph.
Great, thank you, Marcel.
Okay.
Well done, great job. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Butters and Councillor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great presentation. I'm curious as to how the children are chosen, the 20? Curious as to
Well,
how, and what's the age range? Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. And if I can just add to that question as well, is not only how they're chosen, but how are they identified?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But like Jean was just saying, the neighborhood is already identified. So the neighborhood that was a priority by the ministry was the neighborhood that surrounds the school, Saint-Joseph. And the age is from grade 1, so about 6 years old, all the way up to grade 8. So we don't put really an age cap. It can go all the way to high school. But since the school is in that neighborhood, we said grade 1 to grade 8. And how we've identified the kids is we're actually planning on approaching the principal of the school and asking her who is most at need. And of course, we're going to accept everyone who comes. We're not going to turn a kid away because we're at 20. We're going to try to do our best to accept everybody. We don't have to stop at 20. We can go higher if the need is there. We just need to respect the ratio of supervision for the children.
Mm-hmm. So we'll work with the schools and the teachers basically to try and identify the highest needs children at that school. When I was telling you that we're looking at 20, that is basically what the ministry is funding us. They're funding us for the 20 children. If it goes beyond the 20 children, like Marie-Claude was saying, in Welland, even though we were funded for 20, we kept on going all the way to the 46, and the ministry finally came back and added the funding. The thing is, though, is that it's costing Centre de Santé considerable dollars because I have to add the extra staff and for the snacks and everything else. And so what happens is that, usually we like a space that can already accommodate more than 20 children, but there's the staffing and the snacks and the healthy eating stuff like that, the costs go up, but those are things that we basically absorb at that point in time.
So Marcel, at the end of the day, it's not based on an application that you
Nope.
provided the health promotion
Nope.
ministry with.
Nope.
It's basically Lynn saying to you, this is something that we've
It's
identified.
not the LIN, it's the
not
Ministry
Lynn?
of Health and Sports, okay, Culture, Sports and Tourism, And what happens is that when they identified the 78 communities, Mr. Mayor, what they did is that it's not even, the agencies don't even apply to get these programs. Basically, once they've identified the communities across the province, they determine the budgets that they've got available to be able to fund some of the programs within the various communities. And then what they do is they go into the communities and they look for agencies like Centre Santé who have shown some experience and expertise in working with children. And over the last 4 or 5 years, Centre Santé has really reprogrammed or really repackaged itself with the LIN. Basically, I mean, yes, we're primary care. We've got 4 doctors. We've got 5,600 patients in our clinic and everything. But what we've done, though, compared to some of the other health centers, is we've really put the package into the health promotion, and we've started with the children because we decided a long time ago that if we were really going to make it, you know, yes, you have to treat the sick, but you also have to get into that health prevention, okay, the health and wellness. And we really put the package there. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing a lot of work with the children. And so when the neighborhoods were identified and funding came available to the ministry is the one that approached us to be able to start delivering these programs. So it's not community agencies that can go out and apply to start, you know. So when you're contacted by the ministry, you sort of sit back and say, well, this is a double-edged sword. I mean, you know, like, you're not paying the full cost.
Sure.
I may not get the community partners. And so, you know, it's sort of like juggling your budgets and trying to figure out how can I best juggle and make all of this happen. And so it fits within that mandate of health promotion and health and wellness that we want to develop. But the community partners are just so important, or else we'd never be able to do it.
Great, well said. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the presentation, and it looks like a wonderful program. I do have a few questions regarding the selection of students. It sounds like the students will be selected just from that school, from the enrollment of that school. So that is, will there be other French-speaking children allowed into the program, or is this going to be limited to students who are enrolled at École Saint-Joseph?
I'll let Jean.
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. I can tell you that in Welland, the area that was chosen there was where Saint-François and Champlain schools are on Empress. But as a community center that services this large area, we've never closed our doors to anyone who was French-speaking. We even have a family that was bringing their child from Niagara Falls because they think the program is so important. And so it would be open to any child who has the ability to understand and function in French.
Thank you. And how would people access this program? Would you publicize the program and invite people to apply?
Absolutely. So we've already put it out in the leisure guide. So that will be going to a variety of homes. We advertise through the schools as well, so we get the schools to put the information in all of the school bags for all of the children between the grades 1 to 8. We also advertise in the French high schools because we can seek volunteers from the high schools to do their 40 hours of volunteer within the program, and it's really a great fit to have the older kids with the younger kids.
Especially when it comes to the homework programs.
Yeah, and I'm really proud to say we finally got one of those electronic boards at Centre Santé. And so what's been running now is the information on how to get your kids into the program.
Yeah. And what we know is there's, like in Port Colborne, for example, there's a lot of the schools are going towards French immersion. And so what happens is that we, like in Welland, I mean, we've had a lot of requests now for the coming year for children that are in French immersion programs and are in schools in that neighborhood, okay, in that vicinity. And so what happens is that we know that in September of this year, we'll have kids coming in from the French immersion programs, that want to participate. But we're trying to also respect, okay, the guidelines that were put in place by the ministry, because like the epidemiology studies identified high-need neighborhood. And so you're really trying to make sure that you're trying to catch the children out of that catch basin, because that's the ones that are with the highest needs that have been identified.
Thank you.
And according to the principal, the former principal of that school, because she's now moved over to Welland, she said that École Saint-Joseph is the 3rd poorest school in the province of Ontario. So I kind of wondered how come they waited so long to get them on board, but it's a relatively new program still.
They moved the principal to Welland?
Yeah,
They did.
Myriad is gone. But apparently her replacement is...
Apparently her replacement is young and
really?
zippy and just
Good.
well-liked. Yeah.
And thank you very much. And just one final question. There's concern about transportation. How would you get these children back to their homes?
So that's a good question. And generally, the parents come back to pick up their kids at 6 o'clock. Our staff will be walking them from the school to the Vale Community Center, I hope, and then the parents pick them up after the program at 6 o'clock. So it does have some limitations because there's no funding for buses or vans to bring them all over, and we recognize that many parents don't have a car and they don't have that transportation. So it's not perfect yet.
But that's logistics that we work through, and we've had to work it through in Welland. And I can tell you that last year, there wasn't a single parent that was late picking up the child. Because like what happens is that, that's one of the we want the parents to engage in the program. We want the schools, like everybody else. And so it takes everybody's commitment to really make it work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Your Worship. Angie covered one of my questions, and you've answered with regards to why you're not using it. Call St. Joseph, you want to take it out of the school, which is fine. So far, we do have two programs in Port Colborne. One is run by the Y at Steele Street School. The other is run by Community Living at
Port Hope?
Cross Street?
Or Port?
Well, Grassy.
Grassy, yeah. Grassy. I'm just wondering why you didn't maybe go to that organization because of their recreation facility they have at the former school that was there. But, I mean, they have an established program. Part of that program is proper eating. They have the kitchen facilities to teach that. They do have the outdoor areas. Although yours is a language-oriented program, it still doesn't stop you from partnering with a community group that's already running this program for that neighborhood. So,
Thank you for that question. The primary reason was logistics. We have to find a way that the students are going to be able to get to that site quickly, and the École Saint-Joseph is 0.4 of a kilometer south of the Vale Center, located on the same street. There's a beautiful walking trail right there, right from the school to the center, and so accessibility is played a key role in that decision for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Same distance to the school? Yeah, I'm just saying it's, I'm one for not reinventing the wheel. I mean, here we've got government money going into programs, and now we're starting to spread them out across the community, where if our groups could work together, offer a better program by combining.
And again, that neighborhood is chosen by the ministry. And on the PowerPoint, if you recall, the ministry specifically asks us to be sure that the program is operating in the chosen neighborhood.
Which is where community living
Which is always there as well.
And it's probably more so closer to the homes than the Valet Center. Not to say we don't want anybody using the Valet Center, because we do. We want it used as much as possible. This brings me to my concern. As a concern of a counselor, a taxpayer, and a user, is that building is going to be tied up at times when we have other organizations that use that facility all day, almost every day, that there's going to be hours taken away from a portion of it that could force us to go elsewhere with our programming, which was one of the reasons why we tried to put everything in one site together. And I'm looking at hockey, soccer, baseball. Basketball is now partnered with the Y to use the large gymnasium from time to time. Adult hockey tournaments that come in on a Thursday or Friday. Minor hockey tournaments that may start on a Thursday or Friday that use that room for those 2 days. Now we're starting to displace people that actually pay for that room, and that have paid for them, like Golden Puck runs 2 tournaments a year. They've donated quite a bit of money for that facility to be now saying you can't use it. I think there's a logistics problem maybe here. All of a sudden now we've got programs that pay quite a bit of money to the city of Port Colborne to use the facility that now can't use a portion of that facility for their program. Like with minor hockey, we want to start running our coaches clinics out of there. We used to run them out of the Rose Lawn, but now, then people have to drive to the arena and use the on-ice portion of their clinics. Using that facility, they're in the facility, they're right there, all one-stop shop. I mean, that was the whole idea of putting the Valet together. So that is the big concern I do have. But I really would like to see partnering. This council and past councils have really looked at that, and we try to get as many people to partner as possible. And with community living being, to be quite honest, more central to that community, or that neighborhood as you call it, to me, that's just a great fit with them already running a program that is exactly the same. And to me, it would be a better use of tax dollars if there can be a partnership there. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments, members? What I would suggest a member of council may want to consider doing is to send this back to Harry. Harry can obviously work with these folks as well as the scheduling of the Valet Center. I think Councillor Steele makes a good point with respect to the partnerships that you mentioned the YMCA already, which I'm sure they might have space available for you as well in the gymnasiums versus the Golden Puck Room. And as well trying to integrate a lot of it. Let's face it, folks, at the end of the day, we do have a debt to pay to the province as well, because it was the Ministry of Health Promotion that gave us our initial $3 million to kick off the fundraising for this very center, which then accrued over time to $17 million. But they were the first. I remember Jim Watson at the time, coming here with a $3 million check to really kick that off. Wow. So we do have some debt to pay with respect to furthering their wishes and their mandate. So we have to respect that, and I think this council will. But with that, I think it's not fair for you to sit here tonight and try to work something out between times and rooms and all that stuff. When we have a very knowledgeable member of our staff, Mr. Hakeem, our Director of Community Services, that can sit down with you folks, and of course with the partners, as Bill mentioned, with possibly community living, YMCA, Subway, and see what the availability of those rooms are. Whether they be in the center or other facilities that we may in fact have or partner with, and see what we can work out for you. But I think all in all, I can speak for all of council by saying we support what you're doing, and by all means, anything that we can do to make it successful, we will do. So with that said, I think that's a given, but now it's just a matter of how can we best give you a roof over your head.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Marcel.
Okay.
Great job. Members of council, if you want to give staff direction to that effect, Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Steele, that we send this back to Harry, and Harry can work with these folks and come up with some ideas. Okay? Questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Thank you, Harry. I am now going to move to Ms. Carrie Fallon, representing the Pinecrest community, concerns regarding the additional 10-acre greenhouse proposal for a legal marijuana grow operation at 462 Pinecrest Road. I should say Mr. Carrie Fallon. Sure. Actually, Barb, no need to walk. Frank, can you just pour a glass of water out of your phone?
I gather this is not a popular request.
Don't get used to this.
Thank you, Councilman Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Oh, yeah, that's good. If I need more, I'll ask. Thank you very much.
Gary, welcome.
Well, good evening, council members. Can everybody hear me? Mayor Vance Badaway, and to our community residents. I'm here this evening representing our community of Pinecrest. It's a representation of Pinecrest Road, Vimy Road, Fire Lane 2, Fire Lane 3. And as you can see, I'm just one of many here tonight. The concerns and issues that I am about to present to you and make you aware this evening are very real. Some of our residents have lived over 50 plus years on this area of Pinecrest. Some have recently purchased houses in the area. Some have built new houses in this area, and some have invested to improve home equities in this area. So why do we choose to live here? We could use the words peaceful, serene, to describe where we are. But more importantly, we are surrounded by a mature wooded area consisting of mixed woods, hardwoods, pockets of Scotch pine that borders Lake Erie shoreline and beaches on the one side. And on the other side, the landscape changes into traditional farmland, growing the crops of summer and fall harvest. So it's a kind of a setting that you would kind of read in a novel or see on a movie setting somewhere. So you can see the natural beauty before us. You can see why people choose this area. to call it their home, and the most part, the home that they are looking forward to retire in, or do retire in. So in the center of this community was a greenhouse. Took a lot of pride in growing tomatoes. It was passed down a family business that brought Peter Milliboom growing the best tomatoes probably in the Niagara area, perhaps Canada, and I don't think there's anybody that would dispute that in this room today. But the greenhouse was owned by a local resident, operating a local business, contributing to a local economy. But then it was purchased by an outside private company who, like any other business and any other business enterprise, is looking to minimize their expenses, maximize profits. So one day, 1 week, 1 month, depending on how you look at it, somewhere in the spring, 8-foot wall erected, fence went up, and then an 8-foot chain link fence around the perimeter, which is still ongoing. It's a work in progress there. Surveillance cameras installed, security guards placed on the premises. What other facility in Canada kind of resembles this? Would it be Canada's correctional institutions? Yeah, probably. The only difference is they keep people from coming out. This facility keeps people from coming in. So people were pretty aware and obvious that it was a facility growing marijuana for medical purposes, or commonly known as grown-ups. So what would happen if you took one of these plants, walked down the driveway about 50 feet, stepped onto Pinecrest Road? Well, you'd be charged possession of marijuana under 30 grams, maybe more, under Ontario's criminal code that would yield a penalty of 6 months or $1,000. So I heard a statement from someone, I'll take a reference, I think he worked for the city, but that might not be true. But it's the same thing as growing tomatoes. Well, I can assure you that this is not growing tomatoes, it's not growing peppers or flowers, it's growing marijuana. It's a fortress located a stone throw away from houses. It's a fortress that's 0.5 kilometers away from a regional operated Boy Scout camp, which then hike past the facility to go to the public beach access while on their day excursions. And that's about a 3-minute walk from the greenhouse. It's a fortress that is 7 kilometers away from a public city park, promoted very nicely in the website, by the way. It's a fortress that's across the road from a cemetery. So within 1 kilometer of this greenhouse facility, I have approximately 90 signatures, or 88 to be exact, of residents that live in this area. So the definition of a residential area is the land use in which housing predominates as opposed to industrial and or commercial areas. So are we concerned? Yes. However, Health Canada says these marijuana grow-ups are not supposed to be located near public facilities or residential populated areas. So this certainly raises a concern. And now there's a proposal for an additional 10 acres on the table. Do we have a real concern? Yes. Just grab a glass of water. So everybody here has probably taken that one-day seminar on decision-making, planning. I'm sure everybody has. What's the first step in that process? Find the facts, find information, diagnose those facts, and then come up with some clear decisions. We as a community are at the phase right now when this step is, well, we're on the process right now. This is what we want. We want the information, we want the facts. Because without that step, what happens is you fast track and objectives fall short. So Mayor Vance Badaway, as you stated in the Port Colborne website, which again is a very good website, encourage everybody to go on it, has very good content. But you stated, the growth of our community is dependent upon all of us working together toward common goals. However, it all starts with consistent communication. So our community has sent a letter to various members of City Council, regional delegates, and Mr. Prue, Director of Medical Marijuana and Health Canada. I'm not sure if the letter's up there or not. No. So as it states, I'll just quickly kind of highlight. We request that Health Canada schedule an informational meeting for residents. We respectfully suggest the Niagara Regional Council, as well as City of Port Colborne Council members, be in attendance. And the topics would include the commercial growers license, approval process and timeline, plans for any environmental impact studies, which we don't have the time right now to get into because that could take forever in a day here. So we're on the Lake Erie watershed. I mean, we can get into the Conservation Act that has lots of regulations around development with wetlands. And as I could point out, there's the wetlands adjacent to this property. So we want the opportunities for involvement and commitment or questions to be answered. That was signed by me. As stated in the Marijuana Regulatory Reform 2011, it was updated in January 2013. Under requirements for licensed producers complying with municipal zoning bylaws, building codes, was viewed by all stakeholders as a necessary step to securing a commercial production license. Municipalities emphasized that it would be important for interest parties to obtain applicable municipal authorization to operate before applying to Health Canada for a commercial production license. In fact, Mr. Prue, Acting Director of Medical Cannabis, states in an email that licensed producers are required to notify their local government, local police, and fire department their intention to apply to Health Canada so that local authorities are aware of their proposed location and activities. As he states, you may wish to direct your specific questions to your local government. But we have heard on several occasions from residents here, from our city government, basically that we have nothing to do with this and cannot help you. So as you can see, there's a lot of confusion around this on who's taking the ownership on the establishing these grow ops right now. So all we are simply asking is to have a meeting arranged with all the parties concerned to get the real information on the table, all the real issues discussed before expansions and any more permits are to be issued. So you, City Council, are very instrumental in making this happen and meeting the needs of the people you represent, because you are us. Is this the kind of business that's going to promote the best interest of the people of Port Colborne and the business strategic plan that promotes confidence and excitement within the beautiful Niagara region and the city of Port Colborne? Again, quoted from the website, where business and lifestyle is a perfect match. So we are asking you to make a motion in the council meeting tonight that you will assist us in gathering the information necessary to make the appropriate informative decisions that are necessary to make. So we have the time and energy right now. So let's take the full advantage of it. And we're not going to go anywhere. I can assure you that. This is just the beginning stage. So I'll just leave it with that. That's my request. I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions or comments? With none, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
If I can now call on the second delegation, Mr. Pete Mullyboom and Craig Ferguson. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello, Mayor and Council and everything. If you got any questions to ask us, just shoot.
Members of council, any questions or comments to
Excuse me, before that, sir.
If you folks want to introduce yourselves, so council knows exactly who you are.
Sorry.
I'm Craig Ferguson. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay.
And
Pete Muehlboom,
and
former
he
owner.
works there.
Former owner?
Yes.
Okay, members of council? Are there any questions or comments to these individuals regarding the operation that they're about to embark on?
Could I,
Go
on something this situation here, I don't know where these people are getting the information of commercial, because there is no commercial going on there. I think I already said the last time I was here, if and when, if I thought it was going to the commercial end, I said we had to come up in front of the council, and it has to be drawn up, blueprinted, everything, So someone's, I reading this thing, it says 10 acres. I don't know who's coming up with this information. I haven't even thought of doing anything like that to start with at the moment. But I mean, for someone to say that, like I said in the last council meeting, we were here, I said, if it's legal, if we're not doing anything wrong, and part of the thing of when you grow your medical marijuana and for personal use, you have to have security. You have to do that. It's not up to us, and it's Health Canada makes you do that. And I heard him say something about the police and everything. That's only if you're going commercial. We are not commercial. It's for personal use only. So.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think part of the, like, from what I understand, and this is limited, is if you've applied to Health Canada to build a 400,000 square foot greenhouse, right? Wrong?
Okay. Wrong.
That's
no,
what.
Wrong. Totally wrong. Not
Okay.
even.
So
Guys,
address those.
can I have her ask the
Mr. Mayor.
question through me, and then you're going to answer the question
So
through me
that's
as well?
one thing that's
Thank you.
been said, that there's an application in front of Health Canada to have a much larger greenhouse. So maybe they can explain to the residents here. Maybe it is, I think personally it's worthwhile to assist in some kind of an informational meeting that exchanges information both ways, that questions can be asked and answered in a logical, not angry kind of way, because people get upset when they don't know. People get afraid of what they don't understand or what they perceive may be a terrible thing in their neighborhood, and understandably so.
Okay,
So
your
if
question
there's,
is, Councillor, to the
my
presenters?
question is the 400,000 square foot, like the 10 acres was mentioned here by Mr. Fallon. Could you respond to the 10-acre greenhouse?
Thank you, Councillor. Gentlemen?
There's, at this point and no point at that time, has anything been brought up or meant or proposed to Health Canada at any given time at this point. I mean, hasn't even, because I know you have to drop all the papers and all this stuff. And at this point, nothing has been addressed. I don't know where they're getting that information because it's not true.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Aquilina, I'm going to ask you, we had an information report that came before council a few weeks ago, and that information report was intended to give council the information with respect to some of the questions that were mentioned by the presenter, as well as by the councillors. Can you give somewhat of a synopsis on that, as well as address Councillor Butters' comments with respect to the possibility of having a public meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What the staff report had for council's information was all the regulations that were before us that were proposed from Health Canada that take effect April 1st, 2014. The process is if someone wants to apply for a commercial grow-op, they need to follow those regulations that then specify all the security parameters, all the people in charge, police checks, background checks, the whole gamut. And the one requirement was that if someone was intending to set up an operation, they need to then send a notice of the intention to the local police, the fire chief, and a senior official with the municipality. Nowhere in the actual regulations do they say or specify what information then goes back to the federal government. It only says that the applicant needs to provide a copy of the letter that they sent to the local municipality, the fire chief, and the police department. In essence, we have received no applications, no requests for any sort of license proposal. We have not received one, and these regulations do not take effect until 2014, April 1st. So, Mr. Mayor, and I believe what I've heard and what I've saw, there's no application for a zoning bylaw amendment before the City of Port Colborne for any medicinal grow-op. nor would there be an application required. What the actual regulations say, you need to respect the local zoning. In fact, no, let me back up. The regulations don't say respect the local zoning. That comment came from the minister in a press release. Our interpretation is that a medicinal grow-op would be permitted in the agricultural zone. If one was proposed in the urban area, it would be permitted as an industrial use. Again, there is no proposal for us to even review that. That's just my position, and ultimately council needs to make a decision whether or not you want to actually try to regulate where these are going to be permitted or where they're not going to be permitted. In essence, Mr. Mayor, that pretty much concluded what we said in the information report. We said once we know more information, we would report back to council. And I know right now there is an actual process that has been placed online that has 14 pages worth of an application that needs to be answered by someone that's intending to apply for the commercial grow-op license.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Mr. Heil, with respect to mechanism and, of course, the jurisdiction of what the city can, in fact, play a part in this process.
There are many occasions, Your Worship, where the provincial government rules and there is not a lot of opportunity for council to react, and right now this is one of them. It's an agricultural use. There hasn't been any application. I'm sorry, federal. Yes, federal, thank you. There's nothing here before council, and I'm inclined to suggest, Your Worship, that there probably won't be a lot of room for council to do anything other than through its zoning bylaw, any policies in the official plan. Right now, there's been nothing brought forward to council, and as far as I know, council really has no jurisdiction to do anything with how it's going to be licensed, if it's even commercial, but that won't take place until April of 2014.
Thank you. Councilor Butters, back to you.
Well, there's been a series of emails, and I mean, I could forward them, you know, to our staff and to Peter and Craig, and see if there's a way that they could answer some specific questions. If that's helpful to the residents, I don't know. I kind of think like a meeting in some kind of venue that a list of questions could get answered so that people would understand what's going on here, because even like if what's happening right now is just going to continue till the spring of 2014, and then is something different going to happen then? Like, is that when applications will be made to change what happens at the farm?
Mr. Aquilina.
Mr. Mayor, through you, the regulations take effect 2014, April the 1st. If an applicant is looking to actually proceed on that, I would assume that that application would be before the federal government for their consideration, but they can't do anything until April 1st, 2014.
Okay, thank you. Council?
So basically, nothing will happen until the spring of 2014.
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, as once we know more information, because it is a new regulation, we would report back to council. It's new. We don't have all the information. Once we have more information, we can report back to council, but again, it's a federal process. The regulations only say that the applicant needs to notify the city. It doesn't say that the applicant needs permission from the city. It's just to notify.
Right.
That's all they're doing, and they need to do the checks and balances with the security parameters and to ensure that they have no criminal background. All of those need to be in place, need to be confirmed before the license could be issued.
Okay.
Councilor?
So maybe through you to Peter and Craig then, are you willing to sit down with a list of questions and go through them one by one in some kind of meeting scenario that's respectful on both sides, and people can sit and, yeah? They're willing, and we could make room available up here at some point?
Thank you. Perfect.
Yes?
Thank you, Councilor Butters. And let's pursue that following the presentations, but I think you're onto something there. Fellas, you want to make comment?
No, we cooperate with anybody
Yeah,
you want to do.
Okay, you're good.
Oh,
Thank you, folks. I appreciate your, hold on. Thank you. Thank you, fellows. Appreciate it. Just give me a second. We have another presentation. With all due respect to the format, we're going to go to the next presentation. We'll now move on to our third delegation. We have Mr. John Moriara. John? Yeah, you wanted to come on up? No, I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, just give me a second. I'm going to ask for leave of council because this was not on the agenda prior to, but he has asked, as well as we have a second delegate over another issue that has asked to ask any questions prior to this meeting. So if I can ask for leave of council to allow the speakers, Councillor Steele, Councillor Butters, and I'm assuming, sir, you want to speak as well? Okay, so if we can have this fellow speak as well. Council's fine with that? All in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. John? Yeah, come on up, John. I believe it's Moreienea? E-I-R-A. E-I-R-A. Okay. John, welcome.
Thank you very much. I have some prepared statements, but that's based on what was my belief, that there was an application to have a 10-acre cooperation. Surprised to me that there was actually one already present there. That was news to me. But I'd like to thank you, the Mayor, and the Council for the opportunity to speak on this very important matter. A decision that will forever change the landscape of this community for the worse, I believe. Should a medical marijuana facility be authorized to operate near a family-oriented community whose taxpayers pay a hefty fee for their right to live in that community, which happens to be near a Scouts Canada location, a beautiful beach, the area will never be the same. I can assure you homeowners will sell. I will be one. Property values will decrease, and I believe property taxes will have to follow suit. What I consider to be a vibrant community will be reduced to a part of the city that few will want to live or visit. Allow me to take just a few minutes to draw you a mental picture with some true events surrounding medical marijuana grow operations. On Tuesday, March 6, 2012, at about 3 in the morning, masked men attended a medical marijuana grow operation in Toronto and were in the process of breaking into the facility that housed the marijuana. An employee inside heard the breaking of glass and called the police. Police arrived shortly afterwards and once on scene gave chase to these people, these suspects. Police were able to capture and arrest 3. A search of the area revealed that several discarded items related to the offense were found, notably zip ties, some rope, and also an imitation firearm. It should be noted that prior to the police arrival, suspects had already begun to load garbage bags with marijuana. October 17, 2012. Police on routine patrol came upon a vehicle occupied by a female and a child. They initiated an investigation and learned that the owner of the vehicle was on charges for production of marijuana. Police made contact with the owner, who produced 2 licenses to produce medical marijuana. Police entered this facility. Entered the facility that he was licensed to operate and found that he was overproducing marijuana. He was permitted to grow just under 450 plants, but had an excess of 1,000 plants. It is believed the excess was to be sold on the black market. January 13, 2013, police executed a search warrant at an industrial complex in Toronto and located an illegal grow operation. Upon further investigation, they learned that the operators of this illegal grow-op also had licenses for medical marijuana grow operations at other locations. April 30th, 2013, police executed a search warrant at a licensed medical grow operation in Toronto. The subject of the investigation was again a licensed producer who had 3 licenses to grow marijuana. Upon completing their investigation, police learned that the licensed producer had over 2,000 more plants than he was permitted to grow. Again, this belief is that the excess is to be sold on the black market. These are just a handful of examples that I was able to gather in a few hours prior to coming to this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, this type of operation has huge profits, especially when done on the black market. And the consequences of being caught up and punished are quite frankly pathetic in our country. I am not suggesting at this time that the persons responsible, the producers of this property, are involved in such operations or involved in organized crime. But if you have heard historically that there are instances where this does occur, it is a concern. This is a money-making venture. If you think that the police will be able to conduct routine checks on this facility or another governing body will do checks, think again. I did not find any such regulation that would indicate such. There is no obligation for the operators to report suspicious incidents to the police or incidents of attempted break-and-enters. I believe it's Section 45 that mandates all they have to do is make notations of what they have done. In other words, if the operators don't want bad publicity, or if they are involved in criminal activities, there is no way the authorities will be aware until a major incident should occur. Let's not be naive as well about the unforeseen consequences should this operation be up and running. The criminal element will become aware of this location, and they will also be aware of the surrounding area. There are some very nice homes in the area, and there are seasonal owners. They're now up for grabs. What I mean by that, they're going to be ripe, easy pickings. When someone does commit an offense like this, they don't just show up at a grow up and decide they're going to do a break and enter. They stake out the operation, they do observations, they do their homework. And I believe all this shows that this is certainly a public safety issue. Some people have said that the city of Port Colborne does not have a say in granting of the license. I think that it does. And I'll refer to Section 38(1) of the Marijuana for Medical Purpose Regulation that states, it's already been stated today, that persons who wish to obtain a license must first provide written notice to the local government of their intentions. I believe that this is the time when the City Council has the opportunity and an obligation to notify its citizens of the intention and that they have every right to express their real concerns for public safety and say they don't want it. In addition, other concerns such as environmental issues relating to pesticides, vermin control, water consumption, water pollution, the manner in which plant stocks are to be disposed of, how is that all being done? I believe it is a monumental mistake to be silent on this matter. I've never spoken before council, but I feel this is necessary for me to do so. I urge this council to join me and others who disapprove of this project and to voice its disapproval and denounce it to the federal government. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time. Members of council, are there any questions or comments? If no questions or comments, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
Sir? If you want to just state your name and your address, that would be great.
Mayor, council
Can you just
members,
press the,
staff,
sir, can you just press the button there? There you go. You're good.
residents of Pinecrest Point. My name is Gary Dingman. I live at 467 Pinecrest Road, directly across the street from the marijuana grow-op. I'd like to ask Mr. Ferguson a question. You claim that you have no intention on applying for a commercial license. Well, that would mean that all marijuana production would cease as of April the 1st, 2014. Is this what you're saying, sir? There will be no further marijuana production at this facility after April 1st, 2014. Is that what you're stating, sir?
We're not going to get into a debate here, if you don't mind, sir.
Okay,
If you just
he
have a
did make these
presentation.
claims, so I'm
That's
just
fine.
asking.
Fair enough.
To me, a commercial marijuana facility is an industry. It runs the gamut from primary straight to tertiary. They grow it, they process it, they package it, they sell it, and they ship it. Now, to me, that's industry, and the industry is in an agricultural zoning. Therefore, I propose that any application for a commercial facility at this location be denied on that basis. Furthermore, there's an issue of conforming to the neighborhood. This is an area of residential and agricultural housing. An industrial facility does not conform to the existing land use in this area. These are issues that council can address outside the auspices of the Health Canada Act. I ask that council use common sense and prudence in making decisions concerning these matters. I'm a former assessment officer for Prince Edward County, Northumberland, Hastings counties out of the Trenton Assessment Office. This facility will affect land values. However, MPAC will not recognize this as a detriment. Therefore, people will be paying inflated property taxes on deflated land values. As of the present, I have my home for sale. I will not risk my equity by staying. So therefore, I have decided to leave, even at a loss. That's all and you know, we have a very serious problem with an algae bloom in Lake Ontario. And to me, to put a large greenhouse facility in such close proximity to Lake Erie is absurd. If you cover 10 acres, if that is what is actually proposed with glass, where is all the runoff going to go? There will be no land to absorb this runoff. Therefore, unless ditches are built, and if ditches are built, the drainage would go straight into Lake Erie. As stated, we already have a serious algae problem there. And the initial information session I attended, it was stated that organic fertilizer was used. From my research, marijuana is grown with a fertilizer called A and B. A high nitrogen concentrate for vegetation and a high phosphorus concentrate for flowering. Also, since we live in the northern hemisphere, we cannot accommodate 18 hours of daylight for the growth cycle. Therefore, artificial lighting will have to be implemented. Anyone who has ever seen a commercial rose greenhouse operation would know that the whole immediate area is in perpetual daylight. So, I mean, if in actuality 10 acres of greenhouses were to be built, this whole area would be lit up in artificial daylight. And, you know, it does state in the Act that these facilities are not to be located in residential areas. There is a relatively high density of residential land use in this area. Not to mention, as Mr. Fallon pointed out, this is 0.7 kilometers from a public beach and public park and 0.5 kilometers from the Boy Scout camp. These are very serious issues we're addressing here. And I believe council can put a stop to this in dealing with the zoning requirements. And if Mr. Ferguson, as he stated here this evening, states that he does not intend to apply for a commercial grower's license, this would mean that this operation would cease to exist as of April 1st, 2014. Because as of that date, Health Canada will no longer be issuing or honoring personal grow licenses. In order to continue growing marijuana after that date, they will have to apply for a commercial license. So if there is no intention to apply for a commercial license, that means this facility will be finished as of April 1st, 2014. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Butters, the floor is yours. With respect to direction. No, we're done. we're done, okay? Well, no, I've been giving you guys latitude because this isn't a public meeting. There is no report on our agenda this evening, as was stated by our CAO. And as well, there's going to be, I'm hoping Councillor Butters is going to expand on this to look at more possibilities, and the proponents have also agreed to have some information available in terms of their intentions. But I think what's important here, and I think this is where Councillor Butters is going to go, what's important here is that we have the proper people out at the proper venue to give out and clarify the information. We can sit here all night and chase our tails, guys. At the end of the day, we can sit here all night and guess and assume. And what I think is more important is that we have the proper folks out at a public meeting that can answer a lot of the questions that I'm sure you folks have, and as well to give proper clarification to the intentions as well as how this would move forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Councillor Butters to put some direction forward for Council's consideration. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank everybody that got up and spoke here tonight, first of all. I'm going to move that we assist the residents and Mr. Mulboom and Mr. Ferguson in coming together in a public meeting in which maybe we can facilitate or mediate, help with those questions, get the right people invited, whether it's from Health Canada, the Niagara region, our planning department, all those people at the table, so that everybody's questions can be dealt with and answered in a honest and upfront kind of way, so that we all know what's going on here.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. What I would suggest that we do is simply make a request. I want to really put this in perspective, folks, and ensure that we don't have this go sideways. What I mean by that is that there's a jurisdiction here, and we do want to respect that with respect to not giving you false hope what this council can or cannot do. So what I'm going to suggest that council does is, based on Councillor Butters' recommendation, is that we request our Member of Parliament, Mr. Malcolm Allen, to actually be the host of that meeting. It's that jurisdiction falls. I'm not trying to, by no means am I trying to pass the buck. We'll be there with shoulder to shoulder with him to help facilitate this process. So it's not a matter of passing the buck. It's a matter of trying to get the proper people in the room that can give you the information that you require. So what I would suggest, Councillor, as part of that motion is that we request the MP to hold a public meeting that we would all be involved in. It's not us against them. This is all of us together to try and get that information out, to clarify and to give you guys information, for him to have staff there from Health Canada, so that those answers can be, because the last thing we want to do, guys, is give an opinion on, or even if council wades in any way with an opinion based on false information. We want to make sure we have the proper information forward. So what we'll do is, if council agrees, we'll send a request to MP Allen to in fact host a meeting and having the proper folks in the room to answer those very questions that I'm sure many of you have, and to give that clarification that you require, as well as to even give us the information. And although what was said earlier about us not having jurisdiction, that doesn't mean this council can't give an opinion. We have a neighboring municipality right now to the west that's given an opinion on something that's not their jurisdiction either when it comes to wind turbines. But they waded in with respect to their thoughts. How far it's going to go, I think that's subjective, but they waded in. And this council can, in fact, if it's the wish of council, do the same. But I think it has to be based on facts, because in comparison to other situations that are happening throughout the region, I see what can happen when you make decisions without facts. So I think we have to have that first and foremost. Let's move in that direction, and if council agrees, I think that would be the best direction to take. Okay? Councillor Butters, you do have a recommendation on the floor. Do I have a seconder to that recommendation, please? Councillor Danch. Are there any questions or comments by members of council? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, I certainly have huge reservations about this whole issue, but that's for another day and another argument. But at the same time, can we give direction to Dan? April 14th or April 1st, 2014 isn't that far off. If we can have Dan start looking at, no different than any other type of businesses that we've had come into the community, where they should be located, what parameters are involved with putting a commercial industrial operation like this within the boundaries of the city of Port Colborne. I think Dan should start working on something like that, keeping an eye on what the government's doing, even getting in contact with the federal government, and finding out exactly what jurisdiction we do have, especially on the zoning issue. I haven't read where we can't zone this, and I've heard different opinions on who said what with regards to how the municipality can act with this. So if Dan can get proper information on it, because to be quite honest, I don't believe it belongs in a residential area. It belongs in the industrial area. Proper buildings, proper security, proper roads, proper police protection, lighting, everything else, no different than any other commercial operation in this committee. So if we could have that added to that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to add to that request for information that we find out exactly what this is. Is this an agricultural business? Is this a regular industry? What is it? Because I really am not clear on that, and I'd like to know
Thank
that.
you, Councillor. Well, I think, and I can weigh in this because I think Dan, back in the early 2000s, I personally had a great opinion about greenhouses being industrial or agricultural, especially with respect to a lot of the development charges that weren't being paid and certain assessments that weren't being honored based on, in my view, industrial operations that were happening out in agriculture areas. But that was a debate that's been had for the past decade. Our greenhouses, regardless of what's in the greenhouses, whether it's tomatoes, whether it's marijuana, whether it's cucumbers or peppers, you know, regardless, is a greenhouse considered an industrial operation when they're running trucks up and down the road and they're utilizing a lot of what otherwise an industrial operation would use. And it's always been said, and through MPAC and through assessment appeals, that no, they are an agricultural use. And that's what's been over and over. It's been challenged, but it's consistently been won by the greenhouse community that it's an agricultural use, not an industrial use. So, and I'm sure Dan's report will identify that and spell that out. However, again, I go back to my earlier comments. There's no reason why council can't give an opinion. Although we don't have jurisdiction, there's no reason why council can't give an opinion, either way. But I just do believe that that opinion, regardless of whether it's council or you folks, should be based on the facts. Councillor Butters?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on something Angie was saying, because, you know, we have some really large farm operations out in Ward 4 that, you know, and they're involved in biodiesel and making it. And they grow a product and they process it and they make all kinds of stuff out on the farm. So, you know, it's hard to understand sometimes the definitions of where this starts and where that begins. And I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's kind of gray for a lot of us, and we need to be very clear on what the definitions mean and what it all entails.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments or questions, members? Members of staff, any questions or comments? Dan, you're fine? You're good? Okay. With that, members of council, your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. And thank you, folks, for coming out this evening. Now, you can all stay if you want, because we have a great meeting ahead of us. You don't have to leave. Members, I'm going to take a 2-minute recess just to let these folks clear out of here. Move on now. We have no further delegations, so we're going to move on to the Regional Council's report. Councillor Barrick.
That's how rumors get started. Yes. Yeah, folks, well, it's great to be back. There's a 2014 public engagement session going on tonight at the McBain Community Center in Niagara Falls. So the results of the engagement sessions will help shape our 2014 regional budget. Just a couple of other updates as well. Niagara Regional Council adopted a bylaw appointing an interim integrity commissioner for a term of August 1st to October 31st. The role of the integrity commissioner is to ensure that council's code of conduct, along with other procedures, rules, and policies governing their ethical behavior, is being followed. The commissioner has a number of duties, including providing advice and education to members of council to assist in maintaining a high standard of ethical behavior, investigating complaints about the conduct of members of council, and determining if there has been a violation of the code, and imposing penalties on councillors for failing to follow the code of conduct. Recently as well with CAO Heil, I also was at AMO August 18th to 21st. There was about 2,600 participants, and I know usually Councillor Kenny and Councillor Elliott have gone in the past. but I see they were unable to make it Say-Cent, the big player this year. But there's many speakers, including Kathleen Nguyen, Tim Hudak, and Andrew Horvath, along with Chris Hatfield. There was more than 18 conference sessions, including towards full cost recovery for water services, developing sustainable neighborhoods, avoiding higher energy costs in the municipal sector. And they're also, every year, they have a ministers forum where cabinet ministers field questions from participants. I did have an opportunity outside of the forum, though, to speak with Charles Sousa, Finance Minister, in particular about funding the Highway 406 3rd Street interchange. And I did bring back some vendor information for the region. I'll also leave a copy of the AMO conference show guide here for this council as well. There is always a lot of excellent vendor information there as well. Just a quick update on the CAO Selection Committee. We did have a meeting today. I'm a part of that committee. We had a meeting today to review references and have decided on a recommendation to take to Regional Council during a special in-camera council meeting on September 5th. And just on a final note and a friendly reminder that the region has a bursary program, the Niagara Region Bursary Program, designed to help students with financial needs to cover the cost of college, university, and other post-secondary education. The bursaries are $500 and $250 that are available. The application deadline is this Friday, August 30th, and the application packages can be found on the region's website. So that's my report this evening, Mr. Mayor. I know you have a long evening yet. It's been long already, and you're still at the top of your agenda, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. Members of council, any questions or comments to the regional councillor? David, thank you. Appreciate it. Members, we're now going to go on to councillors' items, new business. Councillors' items, new business. Councillor Danch.
Just a couple tonight. I wanted to thank Dan, or I guess Chris, for getting that grass cut over on the old carpenter shop there. The 6-foot weeds are now gone. It looks like we've got a hay field there now, but it looks better than it did. A little concern there. I had a parent coming to see me first thing this morning. There was a situation at Vimy School. A young girl had an epileptic seizure, and they had a very difficult time trying to arrange an ambulance. When they called 911, which is of course our system, there was no address available to give to the dispatcher. And of course, people are running amok, and certainly got some concerns as far as what's going on. And I thought, geez, that's a really good idea. How many of our parks do we have that don't have an address? And I would say that all of them don't have an address. Now, it's fine if you're from Port Colborne and you're running one of those important ambulances and fire trucks and whatnot, but when you're an out-of-towner and you're told that it's at the old Vimy School or something like that, you probably don't realize what's there. And I thought, wow, that's a really good idea. We've got these 911 signs all over the place, and I think maybe we should look into trying to define our parks so that 911 can utilize it. The Township of Wainfleet changed every address because you can't type in an L or an M in your GPS. The young girl was in my store today, and of course she's okay, and that's a good thing, but I really think we should maybe take a hard look at maybe how we could satisfy this issue. It was very important.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. That's actually a great point. Mr. Lee, any comment on that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch.
Chris, yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Our staff is working, we work on a weekly basis with the 911 response with the region and with the fire department, so those are issues that they are constantly addressing. A case in point, if you remember a few months back, or actually a little over a year now, we had an incident in the Lannon complex, and the address is 550 Elizabeth Street, but it's a very large complex, so where does the ambulance respond to? So those are the types of things that they're currently working through. So.
Great, thank you. Councillor?
Just one more thing. I spoke with Harry earlier today. Had a little bike ride there, and I was checking out the marina, and we've got that good-looking dumpster down there. It's got more broken boards on it than it's got good ones, and the garbage is spilled all over the place. And I know Harry's already addressed the issue, and I thank him for that, but maybe a little bit of care can be taken as far as closing the doors and making sure the bags do hit that 4 or 6 foot wide opening, because Mr. Seagull loves to show up and rip things apart, and I just thank Harry for his quick actions on looking after that.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butters? Nothing? I thought I seen your hand go up. I'm sorry. Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, I think it would probably go to Chris. It's about tree complaints. I just wondered if you would run down the timelines on when a complaint comes in about a tree that may need some sort of attention, you know, decided to cut it down or whatever. What actually happens and how long does it take before action is created on the tree?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery. Actually, what we do in the system is we have what we call 4.6. When a response is sent in, we track it that way time-wise, and obviously it's depending on budget, investigation of the tree, is the tree a municipal property versus private? So all those things are addressed, and that can be tracked through the 4.6 if the complaint has been sent in.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I just, I've had a couple of residents call and saying that they've reported a problem with a tree and they're not seeing any action. That's why I wondered if we could give them some idea as to timeframes, how long it would be before they could expect to hear something.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, if they call into the office, then we can track it through the 4.6. We can tell them exactly what the timing is, where they sit in the queue, if, as I said previously, if the dollars are there, if the tree has been investigated, those things.
Thank you. Councillor?
Okay, so it's not our practice to get back to them as to how something is going to be resolved. They need to call us? Okay, that's good. All right. One other thing, just a question, and I'm not sure who this would go to. It's about loading and offloading goods for sale in front of stores and that sort of thing, hardware stores and that such. Is it legal to have a truck unload in the middle of a road and to have a it is. That's what I'm asking about. Because there are some complaints that sort of tow motors coming up to a truck in the middle of the road and offloading goods and, you know, that sort of thing and causing traffic jams and children are walking around, and how good is this to happen?
Let's get an answer for you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Demeray. Throughout the city, we actually have designated loading areas where vehicles should be parking. So if a vehicle is not in a designated loading area, then it would be in violation and could be ticketed if the NRP could get on it, if they actually see the violation happening.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eckelin. I do have some photos then that I will share with you. It is your department that I'll go through with this?
That's right.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, you could send it off to my department.
Wonderful, thank you so much. There's also a concern about parking on Davis Street, just immediately north of the tracks in front of the two hardware stores and across from the park. We'd already restricted some of the parking in that area, but there's a lot of parking infractions going on, and that needs to have some attention.
Good. Thanks, Ange. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Worship. A couple issues here. First is if we could, through you to Harry. Harry, if we could remind the users of the Valet Center that the Golden Puck Room is a rental room. It is not a free open space for anyone to use. Not only over the weekend, but in several minor hockey evenings where we rented the room, we had outside groups that rent the facility come in and kind of give us a hard time when we asked them to leave. We rented it, we paid the money. So I know staff on the weekend, there was some comments made that it should just be open. I mean, I have no problem opening it if they want to pay the funds that everybody else does. I mean, that's what it's there for, because, you know, it's cleaned when it's paid for. So if we could just remind all our users that that is a fee-for-service room. Thank you. Second one is, I mean, I think we've all seen this, all our neighborhoods. The emerald ash borer is devastating the city of Port Colborne, and we're losing thousands and thousands of ash trees. I know Chris can attest through his department with Dwight and Paul. Our streets, the trees that we own, public have to look after, obviously, their trees that are on their portion of their properties. Our public parks, you look at the TA Atlantic complex, huge amount of trees have been just wiped out. If you even look across the street towards the Inco property and the bush lot there, just look in there and how many dead trees, all ash. I would ask that council support a recommendation to staff. They come back to council with a report prior to budget with a long-term plan with dollar amounts attached on how we can reestablish trees in neighborhoods, in parks, any property that we own, obviously. But it has to be long-term. I mean, some of you may not remember, but I do remember that when the Dutch elm disease came through, devastated city of Port Colborne. I mean, Elm Street's called Elm Street for a reason, but in essence, if you change the name today, because there's no elm trees left. Very few in the city of Port Colborne left. Now, ash trees are a totally different type of tree. Personally, I like oaks and maples, but that's me. But yeah, if we could have that come back with regards to that, so that we can actually put a policy in order that staff can follow with, again, the proper dollar amounts. The cutting alone is going to be huge on this, and we can't just leave trees sit to fall over, to damage property, to, you know, I suppose somebody could be injured, but just once it falls, you got to clean it up anyway. So if we can be proactive on this, I'm sure we're not the only community doing this. I don't know if there's any government plans available for this, A, on the replacement, B, on any type of costs associated with cutting down such a large swath of your area. So if I could have support on that, I would like to put that forward.
Thank you, Councillor. And if I can have a seconder for that, Councillor Elliott. I don't want to put any words in your mouth, Bill, but you're looking for basically a strategy to deal with the existing problem with respect to taking the trees down, but as well a sustainable strategy to make sure they're all replaced with the proper trees. Great. Any questions or comments? Staff, any questions? Clarification? You're good? No questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Steele. Any further new business, Councillors' items? With none, council or staff updates? Any updates, guys? We're all good? Mr. Hakeem, go ahead.
Just one to members of council. The Leisure Guide will be distributed this week on the 29th through the Tribune. So just be on the lookout. I really mention that for the community because there's a lot of things in it that I think thank you. That I think will be quite of interest to everyone in the community. And so just look out for it and make sure that if you have any questions, just to contact Community Services and we'll be able to answer most of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Harry. No further updates? We're all good? Okay, we'll now move on to the adoption of the minutes. I do have a set of minutes here from the 19th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated August 12, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele, any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. Okay, folks, moving on to the items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Butters, item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is from the Department of Chief Administrative Officer, Health Services Division, report number 2013-01, subject report for informational purposes, Health Services update. Recommendation that council receives this report for information purposes, being an update to the extremely successful interprofessional care pilot project that was implemented by the city with Dr. Jeff Remington as physician lead and Joanne Ferriccioli as administrative lead, and that Dr. Remington and Joanne Ferriccioli be commended for their continuing efforts to expand and promote improved and enhanced primary care services for the citizens of the city of Port Colborne. Yay, team!
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Butters. Have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? Councillor Butters, floor is yours.
I just think this is just this has been a tremendous evening of celebration for Joanne and Dr. Dewar and for this, and I just like to put it out there that we're doing good.
Thank you, Councillor Butters, well stated. Members of council, members of council, any further questions or comments? Joanne, any comments? You're good? If you guys haven't figured it out yet, Joanne hates talking in public. Joanne, as I said earlier, great job. I think one of the things that folks in Port Colborne have to recognize is that, you know, way back when in the 40s and 50s and 60s, you know, everybody counted on their local doc, especially in the 50s and 60s and 70s and even into the 80s. And, you know, you can remember how much emphasis was placed in our hospital, especially with a lot of the changes that were being made. Well, one of the things that this city has been able to do is really divert a lot of that effort with respect to what was otherwise defaulted on a hospital, now with community-based primary health care. And now a lot of those services are being born and being serviced by our medical faculty, your family doc and the community health centers and the family health teams and places like that, versus constantly forcing people to go to an emergency room and wait 8 to 12 hours for the same services. So Joanne's to be commended, along with Dr. Remington, who's the physician lead, and others that are part of this whole process to ensure that the patients have an easier time getting cared for, versus, again, going and waiting in these ERs for 8 to 12 hours. Just simply pick up the phone and make an appointment with the doc, or if it's a needed service right away, then of course they can go into their clinic, which is a community health center, family health team, or the ER last case scenario, or resort, and take advantage of those services. But Joanne, great job. Well done. And to Dr. Remington as well, and the others that have been part of this process, a job well done. Good job. No further comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. And we'll now move on to item 2. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Department of Community and Corporate Services Finance Division Report Number 2013-27. Subject amendment of the development charges bylaw 4354-10809. The council approved bylaw number 5354-10809, being a bylaw to impose development charges for the city of Port Colborne, be amended by changing the exemption from 12 months to 24 months for property being redeveloped by removing from section 3.13 the reference to 12 months and adding the reference to 24 months, with the revised section 3.13 to read as follows. Despite any other provisions of this bylaw, where as a result of the redevelopment of land, a building or structure existing on the same land within 24 months prior to the date of payment of development charges in regard to such redevelopment was or is to be demolished in whole or in part, or converted from one principal use to another principal use on the same land, in order to facilitate the redevelopment, the development charges otherwise payable with respect to such redevelopment shall be reduced by the following amounts, provided that such amounts shall not exceed in total the amount of the development charges otherwise payable with respect to the development.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments to that? Councillor Steele.
Brought this forward for you, Your Worship, so I'll leave it to you.
Great, thank you. The clerk has informed me that Mr. Neil Schoen is here to speak on the issue. I will ask Council for leave to allow Neil to speak on it. Moved by Councillor Steele, second by Councillor Desmarais. Any questions or comments to that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Mr. Schoen, come on up. Welcome, as always.
Through you to Dan Aquilina, thank you. My client is super excited about the recommendation, assuming that council will at least support the doubling of the time available for him. Despite his OMB appeal, it looks like this would still fit the timelines for him. That's great, but I did still think it was appropriate to come and say these things don't happen very often. You only get one shot at changing bylaws every number of years. You can't keep coming back to make changes. So I still would, based on a quote I read from you, Mr. Mayor, in the paper a couple of days ago about the cement plant company coming, to maybe put your forward blinkers on a little bit more and look forward to maybe extending the 24 months to 5 years to match the rest of the region, to match all the rest of the municipalities in Niagara region and the region itself, so that we don't have developers looking at our laws and saying, they are unorthodox in Port Colborne, but in this particular case, they're unorthodox in the wrong direction. Instead of granting more opportunities for business to come and to develop, you're still falling short somewhat from the rest of the region. That recommendation is a possibility according to the report, and we appreciate that. Happy for the 24 months, and if that's what it ends up being, great, but if you could extend it to 5, my client won't take advantage of that, but maybe others may have that opportunity, in particular because of the OMB appeal issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Members of Council, any questions or comments to the presenter? With none? Thanks, Neil. Thank you. Members of Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Your Worship. Although it does say 24 months here, and I will support that due to the fact that I still agree with 5 years, because to me, as a community, you should try to be as uniform as possible with your regional government and other municipalities around you, especially in instances like this. I don't think this is something that's out of the ordinary. But I will support, because that evening I think I was one of maybe 2 that would support 5 years. Everybody else was anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So I'll support this. But I do think we do have to be cognizant of the fact what goes on around us.
So Councillor, are you looking at putting an amendment forward, or are you going to leave it alone? You're going to leave it alone? Okay. Okay. Any further questions or comments, members? So to the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. And thanks again, Neil. Appreciate it. Members will now move on to item 4. Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Department of Community and Corporate Services Clerks Division, report number 2013-25, subject amendment to the eligibility criteria prescribed by the city's lottery licensing bylaw. That bylaw 23 being a bylaw providing for licensing of charity or religious organizations to conduct bingo lotteries, raffle lotteries, or lottery schemes held at bazaars within the city of Port Colborne be amended by adding thereto the following. That in addition to the eligibility requirements set out by the province of Ontario and this bylaw, applicants for a license must provide services to the residents of the city of Port Colborne and be based in the city of Port Colborne or provide services within the region of Niagara to include a significant number of Port Colborne residents. Applicants for the license must submit written documentation demonstrating compliance with this provision to the license clerk at the time of application. That the appropriate bylaw be presented for approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Elliott, are there any questions or comments to that? Councillor Demeray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to say thank you to staff and let them know I certainly do appreciate the work that they put into this, and I think that we're moving in the right direction with this.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Further comments? Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Worship. Just like my fellow councillor, I did speak on this subject a while back. I do want to thank the clerk for her and her department's job in this. I think she's hit the nail on the head and really took the feeling of what this council wanted and who we wanted to pick up through our lottery licenses. I did state at that meeting that there were members, or not members, groups that, although weren't located in Port Colborne, do a lot of good work for the citizens of Port Colborne. So I'd like to, just like my fellow councillor here, thank all involved.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments or questions, members? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 5. Councillor Steele.
6.
Oh, was it 6 you wanted? 6. I had you docked off here on 5. I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Your Worship. This is for Councillor Elliott's conflict. Department of Planning and Development, report number 201351, subject contract agreement for realty services. One, that the city enters into a contract agreement with Royal LePage attached here too for the sale of 40-44 College Street West, CMT lots, West Side Arena, and for any other property it so chooses. 2, that the Director of Planning and Development continue to be authorized to sign the contract agreement, listing agreements, and any other realty matter except for any purchases and sales, except for any purchase and sales agreements. 3, that the city clerk prepares the necessary bylaw for council's approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Any seconder, please? Councillor Butters, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 14. Councillor Danch.
So, Councillor Frank Danch, on behalf of the Main Street Business Improvement Area, we request for 2 garbage cans to be located at the Wishing Well Dress Shop and Stitches by Aunt Jackie. That the correspondence received from Councillor Frank Danch on behalf of the Main Street Business Improvement Area, we request for 2 garbage cans to be located at the Wishing Well Dress Shop and Stitches by Aunt Jackie be referred to the Director of Engineering and Operations for staff report. And the only reason I brought it up...
Hold on. Thank you.
Oh.
I just find it comical that we have to actually ask for a report to get garbage cans placed. So, so as you were reading that, I was kind of laughing in my head. So, I have a seconder, Councillor Demeray. Frank, go ahead.
And the only reason I brought this forward was because I was getting a little flack from the members of the group. We are an active BIA on Main Street, although we do have the newest dressed up street in the city. We are active, and this request was from a couple of the people there that were mentioned, and we are going to get a couple more garbage cans out there. We know the costs are going to be coming out of our BIA fees, and the city staff will be emptying them, and we're just trying to keep Main Street a little bit cleaner, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to go to Mr. Heil. Is there a reason why we have to have a report? Can't we just, if it's needed, can we just place them? And
Your Worship.
The budget is from the BIA, I'm assuming, so.
Well, that's the question.
Okay.
If it's a BIA payment, shouldn't be an issue. There's a cost to it. Right now, there is a budget, and council will recall that the budget is over $30,000, and it's adding more. And I don't know the whole cost, and I would ask Acting Director Chris Lee to speak, if you so desire, Your Worship, as to what the cost actually is for a garbage can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howell. Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to
Council.
Council as a whole. As we've stated in the past, the waste receptacles, assuming that we want recycling as well as refuse, that's somewhere in the vicinity of $1,000 to $1,200 for the receptacle, and then the collection fees are over and above that. So depending on how many you go, if you go with 2, it's simple math, and we go from there.
And if I may, is it the norm to actually have the BIA pick up that capital cost as well as the operational cost?
The operational cost, that hasn't been the case, but in the installation of it, yes, that has been in the downtown core. The BIAs have done that in the past.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Danch, on behalf of the BIA, is the BIA aware of that? Are they intending on picking up that capital cost?
We are aware that it's about $1,100. That's what Mr. Hoopinen had said to us, and we are prepared for that, so thank you.
Okay, so can we have that direction? Instead of asking, I don't want staff to come back and spend all the time on a report, 4 or 5 pages for a garbage can. So can we actually have a recommendation to come forward that the BIA does in fact move forward with the placement of those, working with staff and the proper placement, and then of course putting that on the operating schedule as well?
And that's basically what we were asking. We know that it may not necessarily be right in front of the wishing well, due to underground lines and all that kind of stuff, but we understand that, we have to pay for this, and we're willing to go along with that, and that's the recommendation.
Okay, so if we can add that to the actual recommendation, we'll look at that as a friendly amendment. Is that fine, Madam Clerk? Is it friendly?
It's friendly.
Okay. I don't want you to kick me again. Do you have a second to that? Councillor Steele? Questions? Go ahead.
Does this really need to come here? Do we not have an agreement with the BIA that, like we do with the downtown BIA, that this would be paid for by the BIA? They just ask staff, here's the money, and away we go?
I think the operating expenditure is why it's here, because we're going to need an operating, obviously, it's going to impact on the operating, so there are dollars that are going to be expended by the city to basically empty out the garbage cans. So therefore, because it's got an operating expenditure, it does need a motion to council.
Okay, I just don't remember, I mean, we've increased our garbage cans downtown. I don't remember any of them coming here.
That's because downtown doesn't really have the money.
It's because they pay for it, Counselor. They pay for it.
Okay, hold on here. Let's not make
They pay for it.
Okay.
Can I make
Mr.
that?
Howell, do you want to
They
add
pay
to
for it.
Mr.
Oh, there
Howell.
is no agreement?
Go ahead.
Your Worship, we're working on a form of agreement. There are no agreements with either BIA, and the intention is to identify what the costs are. So the whole schedule been pulled together, but it's work in progress at this. We just don't have.
That's
it.
fine.
Thank you.
It's
Okay.
fine, thanks.
But I think the operating side of it as well, with all due respect to council's budgeting, we should know when there's extra money going out for extra services over and above the current level of service. Councillor Elliott?
While we're beating up the downtown BIA, I will jump to the defense. And I guess, to me, the obvious question is, why do the BIAs have to buy the garbage cans? And we're going to have a discussion about, should the BIAs pick up the cost of city works picking up the garbage? When, if the BIAs didn't buy the garbage cans, there wouldn't be any. And then what kind of mess would the city be in if we didn't have garbage cans? Because if the BIA downtown didn't buy those garbage cans, we're not going to put any out. Frank's going to go and buy a couple more, or their BIA, put them out on Main Street. If they don't buy them, they're not there. So where does that leave us if the BIAs don't have the garbage cans out? We just wouldn't have any? I don't understand a city not having any receptacles of any kind on any street, anywhere. I don't, somebody explain to me why that doesn't happen.
Mr. Howell? I can give my opinion, but...
Your Worship, you're asking me for an opinion. I have no fact on this. And since opinion really rests with the 9 of you sitting on the table, I will have to
Thank you, Mr. Howell.
decline.
I think the easy answer to that is and it is a council decision. That's the bottom line. And at the end of the day, councils have thought it appropriate that the BIAs look at all capital improvements, the BIAs standing for Business Improvement Area, that they would look at expending their dollars based on their levies to beautify the area by having a part to play in buying receptacles. Now, having said that, you make a good point. If they didn't buy them, where would that stand? Where would that be? Well, that's your decision. Quite frankly, that's your decision as a council. During budget time, if there are, or there is a move afoot to buy receptacles for the downtown area, then that is your decision to make. In time, the decision that you as a council and past councils had made is that the onus would be placed on the BIA, and that's been accepted by the BIAs, by the way. And I think how that started, Dave, was back in the mid-90s, when we had our cans out there. The downtown BIA came to us and said, those cans are ugly. We don't want those cans out there. We want to beautify the area by putting what they call, and this may be an oxymoron, but we want to put decorative garbage cans out there. So they then did that, and you can see what we have today. And I think that's how it started. But I think if worst case scenario, if in fact the BIA refused to put the garbage receptacles out there, I think the council would then be faced with a decision whether we do it or not. So. But I think it all started with the beautifying of the downtown area. Because back then, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, we used to have the blue drums with City of PC on them, which really didn't go well there downtown. Okay, guys, so with that all said, any more questions or comments? You're good? Okay, so I'm going to go to the vote on the actual motion. Well, there was an amendment, Madam Clerk? A friendly amendment that was made that you accepted. So with that, as amended, friendly amendment on the actual motion, are there any further questions or comments? No? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thanks, guys. We'll now move on to any notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? With none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Butters, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. That rolls us into our council meeting, which for those that are watching on COGECO, means that a lot of what we just discussed during our committee of the whole is now going to be ratified at this portion of the meeting and become law through bylaw that the clerk will read when she introduces the bylaws, and of course council passes the confirmatory bylaw. So with that, Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Motion to confirm the agenda, members. Councillor Butters, Councillor Elliott, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Disclosures of interest. Councillor Elliott.
Item 6, as I represent the company mentioned in the item.
Thank you. So if I can have a member lift that, please. We do have 2 sets of minutes that we're going to adopt, or we're going to put on a table to adopt this evening. The minutes of the 28th meeting special of council dated August 12, 2013, and the minutes of the 29th meeting regular of council dated August 12, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott. 12, 2013, both 2012. I'm sorry, both are August 12th, 2013. One's the 28th, one's the 29th meeting. Okay? You good? Councillor Dance, you're going to second that? Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Steele.
Item 6 for the conflict.
Thank you. Any further items? With no further items, I will go to a motion on all the items other than item 6. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Dance. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Item 6, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Department of Planning and Development Report number 201351, subject contract agreement for realty services.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Dance. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? With none, Madam Clerk, introduction of the bylaws, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 5993-9913, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5354-10809, being a bylaw to impose development charges for the city of Port Colborne. Bylaw 5994-113, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 23, being a bylaw providing for the licensing of charity or religious organizations to conduct bingo lotteries, raffle lotteries, or lottery schemes held at bazaars. Bylaw 5995-10113, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement with Royal LePage Niagara Real Estate Center. Bylaw 5996-10213, being a bylaw to appoint an engineer to prepare a Section 76 report for the Marsh drain and to provide for the authority to the town of Fort Erie to include the portion of the marsh drain situated in the city of Port Colborne into one combined report. And finally, bylaw 5997-10313 being a bylaw to temporarily close a section of King Street to vehicular traffic September 14 and 15, 2013.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, affirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 5998-10413 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting August 26, 2013.
Mr. Mayor, we are bringing forward a public meeting report for Council's consideration on September 23rd. Notice will be sent out, and we will have that public meeting that evening at 6:30 p.m., September 23rd.
So we have a Committee of the Whole Council meeting on September 9th. Then we're going to have, on September 23rd, as part of the Committee of the Whole Council meeting, we're going to have a public meeting with respect to the precast concrete.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. There'll be a special meeting of council just to consider that.
Before council?
Correct.
Okay, good. The second question, there was a letter to the editor that was in the Tribune this week, and I think, once again, it was unfortunate the fellow didn't pick up the phone and just make the call and ask the question. And it spoke about the actual property that's being looked at for the precast concrete facility. There was mention about a hotel years ago, and the hotel was to be located at the corner of Highway 3 and 140. Is the actual precast concrete rezoning for that property, or is it for the property which is the actual quarry pit?
Mr. Mayor, I never did see that article, but I could comment that that property does contain the tract of land that was rezoned for a hotel, but the proposed precast facility would be northeast of that on a separate parcel, separate piece of the property measuring 300 meters by 500 meters.
Great.
Kitty corner to that proposed hotel.
So different property?
It's the same property, Mr. Mayor. Legally, it's the same property, different location on that property. It's a large property.
Okay. So it would be north of, where they were proposing the actual hotel and strip mall, it would be north of that?
Northeast, Mr.
Northeast
Mayor.
of that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. With that, members, I will be looking for a motion to go into closed session to address the minutes of the closed session portion of the August 12th, 2013 special and regular council meetings. B, Confidential Chief Administrative Officer Special Project and Corporate Strategic Initiatives Report Number 2013-05 concerning matters impacting the Port Colborne Energy Park pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and subsection 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And finally, C, Confidential Chief Administrative Officer Report Number 2013-04, concerning Port Colborne Energy and Port Colborne Fiber investment pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392A, the security of the property of the municipality or local board. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Have a wonderful week.